Hello, Authority Gap listeners, and welcome to the Authority Gap podcast, the AI-hosted companion series for consulting firm founders and B2B expert-led service firms that want to become easier for buyers to understand, trust, recommend, and choose. In this episode, we're looking at why good consulting firms lose deals they should win.
Right.
And here's the question. What if your firm is not losing because it lacks expertise, but because buyers cannot clearly recognize, trust, explain, or defend your value?
It is such a massive question.
It really is. I mean, so imagine you're sitting across a polished mahogany table. Or, more likely these days you're just staring into a Zoom grid, right?
Yeah, the endless Zoom grid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're looking at this prospective enterprise client, and you have just delivered a phenomenal pitch.
Oh, the kind where you just know you nailed it.
Right. You know, without a shadow of a doubt that your firm has like twice the depth of experience of the other guys they're evaluating. Your methodologies are sharper. Your partners have actually sat in the operator seat. You know the exact pitfalls this client is going to face, and you've got this bespoke roadmap to get them through it. So you log off feeling victorious.
You're practically popping champagne.
Exactly. But then, 3 days later, you get the email.
Ugh, the email.
Yeah. We were incredibly impressed by your team, but we've decided to go in another direction.
It's just a gut punch.
It is. And the kicker, the part that really stings, is you find out they went with the safe, predictable, frankly mediocre option.
The firm that uses cookie-cutter templates.
Yes, the templates. So today in this deep dive, we are going to look at the exact psychological and strategic gap that caused that email to be written.
And, it is a devastating moment for a founder. And unfortunately, it's just entirely pervasive in the expert-led services space.
Yeah.
If you are a consulting firm founder listening to this, you have lived that scenario. And your natural reaction, your instinct, is to assume the market is irrational.
Right. You're sitting there thinking, how could they not see the difference in quality?
Exactly. How could they choose a firm that is objectively less capable? But the mission of our deep dive today is to fundamentally dismantle that reaction.
Okay, lay it on us.
We are going to completely reframe how you view your firm's market presence. Because the hard truth we have to confront is that the market is not being irrational at all.
Wait, really? It feels pretty irrational when they pick the worst option.
It feels that way, sure. But the market is behaving exactly as it must when faced with high stakes, high complexity, and immense personal risk.
Oh.
To understand why you lost that deal, we have to stop obsessing over the undeniable reality of what your firm does and start forensically examining what the buyer can actually interpret.
Okay, I want to push back on that immediately. Because the instinct of every highly skilled professional is that, the work should be the primary variable.
That's the dream.
Right. There's this deeply ingrained belief, it's almost like a romanticized myth in professional services, that good work speaks for itself.
Oh, absolutely. The myth of the meritocracy.
Exactly. If you just put your head down, if you deliver absolute excellence, if your insights are genuinely superior, the market will naturally recognize your authority. So are you saying that the actual quality of the expertise is secondary to the packaging of it?
I am saying that without the right translation, the quality of your expertise is effectively invisible.
Invisible. Wow.
Let's look at the mechanism of how a buyer actually processes information. This brings us to what we call the core tension, the translation problem.
Okay, the translation problem.
Right. There is a massive and often fatal disconnect between the internal view of a firm and the external view. Inside your firm, your expertise is atmospheric.
Atmospheric, I like that. Meaning it's just everywhere.
Exactly. It's the air you breathe. You sit in partner meetings and listen to brilliant debates about market dynamics. You stand at whiteboards mapping out incredibly elegant solutions to, complex supply chain bottlenecks.
Right. The internal Slack channels are just lighting up with client victories all day.
Yes. Your brain is swimming in this rich, highly contextualized soup of your own competence. And because you experience it all day, every day, your brain just assumes that this competence is a self-evident truth.
Right. It's the curse of knowledge. Because it's so obvious to us, we assume it must be at least somewhat obvious to the outside observer.
Precisely. It is a cognitive bias. But now put yourself in the mind of the buyer.
Okay.
They do not sit in your partner meetings. They don't see the whiteboard sessions. They don't know about the agonizing late nights your team spent refining that one crucial insight.
So they are totally blind to the atmosphere of competence.
They have zero access to it. Instead, they are peering at your firm through a tiny, heavily obscured keyhole.
A keyhole. Okay, I love this analogy. I actually want to bring up another analogy here, one that really struck me. It's like handing a crisp $100 bill to an alien who's visiting Earth for the first time.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right, because that bill has immense inherent value. We know that. But to the alien, I mean, it's just a printed piece of paper with a dead guy's face on it.
Exactly. It means nothing without the context of our economic system.
So wait, let's unpack this. Does this mean our expertise is basically just an unreadable currency to a new buyer?
That is exactly what it means. It's unreadable until you translate it, because buyers are just looking through that keyhole and they don't see the whole bank, they just see a fragment.
Right, and I think founders often assume buyers are doing deep investigative research, We assume that before a buyer gets on a call with us, they've read our 4,000-word manifesto.
We wish.
Yeah. We think they've studied our methodology page, they've watched all our webinars. We assume they have a relatively complete picture.
That is the assumption, and honestly, it is almost always wrong. Enterprise buyers are overwhelmed. They are time-starved. They are managing their own internal political landmines. They are operating under immense cognitive load.
Right, they're stressed.
Highly stressed. They do not have the bandwidth to do a deep archaeological dig into your firm's intellectual property, so they are forced to evaluate you from scattered fragments.
Fragments.
Yes, fragments. A buyer's perception of your firm is rarely built from a holistic, carefully curated journey. It's built from isolated collisions.
Give me an example of a collision.
It's a single headline on your website that they skimmed in 3 seconds while they were distracted on a conference call.
Right.
It's one heavily jargoned LinkedIn post that scrolled past their feed on a Tuesday morning. Or maybe it's a vague 3-sentence referral email from a colleague who just said, hey, you should talk to these guys, they're smart.
So the buyer is basically walking down the beach, picking up a piece of sea glass, a broken shell, and a piece of driftwood. And from those 3 little fragments, they have to somehow deduce the entire architecture of the ocean.
That is exactly what they are doing, and here is where the breakdown happens. If those fragments are written in the internal language of the firm.
Which they usually are.
Right. If they are full of dense methodologies, proprietary naming conventions, or broad academic statements about, synergistic operational efficiencies.
Ugh, the jargon.
Yeah, the buyer's brain simply rejects them.
Because it just requires too much work to decode.
Exactly. The human brain is a cognitive miser. It wants to conserve energy. If a buyer picks up a fragment of your firm's messaging and they have to burn mental calories trying to figure out, wait, what exactly do they do? Does this apply to my specific problem?
Right. Is this just theory or have they done this before?
If they have to ask those questions, you have already lost them. You are forcing the buyer to do the heavy lifting of translating your raw expertise into their specific business context, and buyers just will not do that heavy lifting.
They'll just move on to the firm that does the translation for them.
Exactly.
This makes me think of a very specific analogy, and I want to see if this tracks the mechanics you're describing. Let's say I am an enterprise buyer, and I have chronic, debilitating lower back pain, and I go to a crowded medical conference looking for help. I walk up to Firm A. Firm A is run by a brilliant, world-renowned diagnostician.
Top of their field.
Right. But Firm A's booth has a banner that says, Comprehensive Musculoskeletal Optimization and Advanced Neurological Rehabilitation Paradigms.
That is a mouthful.
And when I talk to the doctor, he starts explaining the intricate Latin nomenclature of the spinal column and the cellular biology of nerve inflammation.
He's making you work for it.
Exactly. Then I walk over to Firm B. Firm B's banner says, We fix chronic lower back pain for executives who sit at desks 10 hours a day.
Bam. Instant translation.
Right. Now, Firm A might objectively be the smarter doctor. They might have a deeper understanding of human anatomy. But Firm B didn't make me translate anything. They handed me a fragment that perfectly mirrored my reality.
That is a phenomenal illustration of the mechanism at play. Firm A is demanding that you, the patient, learn their language to access their value. Firm B has learned your language and presented their value in a way that requires zero cognitive effort to interpret.
0 calories burned.
Right. And this leads us to a fundamental rule of how markets operate. And it's a rule that every consulting founder needs to internalize. Expertise is what your firm has. Authority is what buyers can recognize.
Let's hold on that for a second. Expertise is what the firm has.
Yeah.
Authority is what buyers can recognize.
Yes.
That implies a complete decoupling of the two concepts.
Yeah.
Like, you can be the foremost expert in the world, but if the market cannot recognize it instantly, your authority is 0.
It is functionally 0 in the context of a buying decision.
Wow.
Expertise is an internal possession. It is your intellectual capital, your frameworks, your lived experience. You own that. But authority is an external phenomenon.
It lives outside the firm.
Authority only exists in the mind of the buyer. It is the external translation of your expertise into a format that the buyer can instantly categorize, trust, and act upon.
Okay, I see.
If you have massive expertise but no recognizable authority, you will constantly, agonizingly lose deals to firms who have less expertise but much clearer authority.
Because the buyer cannot buy your expertise.
Exactly. They can only buy their interpretation of your expertise.
Which perfectly explains that frustrating scenario we opened with. You didn't lose to the mediocre firm because the buyer preferred mediocrity.
Nope.
You lost because the mediocre firm was easier to interpret. They represented a lower cognitive burden and a lower perceived risk.
That's spot on.
But this realization, the fact that buyers are evaluating us based on these tiny fragments, I think this leads founders into a very specific, very dangerous psychological trap.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if a founder accepts that they are losing because buyers only see fragments, the most logical, immediate, almost biological response is to say, well, if the problem is that they only see a few fragments, the solution is obvious. We need to generate thousands of fragments.
Yes, the volume play. It happens all the time.
Exactly. The pipeline gets a little thin, anxiety spikes, and the founder says, turn up the volume.
Just flood the zone.
Right. If one LinkedIn post a week isn't working, let's post twice a day. If our newsletter isn't converting, let's start a podcast, run a webinar, and send 500 connection requests a week. We assume that the antidote to being misunderstood is simply to become louder.
Which brings us to one of the most insidious dynamics in B2B growth, the activity trap, or as we can also call it, the illusion of momentum.
I really want to dig deep into this illusion because it is incredibly seductive. I have seen incredibly smart founders, people who analyze complex data for a living, fall for this trap.
It's so easy to do.
It is, because they look at their HubSpot dashboards, they look at their LinkedIn analytics, and they see the charts going up and to the right.
Impressions are up.
Page views are up. New connections are up. The marketing team is sweating. The sales development reps are sweating. It's a flurry of action.
Lots of sweat, yes.
And because there is so much internal physical and financial exertion, the brain creates a false equivalence. We assume that because we are moving so fast, the buyer must be moving closer to us.
It is a profound category error. You are confusing internal exertion with external market movement.
Wow. Okay.
Let's look at the actual mechanism of what happens when a highly capable firm decides to just turn up the volume without fixing their translation problem first.
Okay.
When a firm gets scared and leans into broad reach, they usually don't resort to obvious, low-quality spam. That's the mistake people make when analyzing this. They think the activity trap is just sending buy my stuff messages.
Right, like those terrible automated DMs we all get.
Exactly. But smart firms make much more sophisticated mistakes. They produce high-effort noise.
High-effort noise.
Yes. They write those 4,000-word, peer-reviewed white papers on navigating paradigm shifts in post-digital supply chains.
Oh, boy.
They launch comprehensive outreach campaigns targeting anyone with a director title in Fortune 500 companies, offering to discuss enterprise resilience.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here. Isn't that the definition of thought leadership?
It looks like it.
Yeah, I mean, if I am a supply chain consulting firm and I publish a rigorously researched, highly intellectual piece on post-digital supply chains,
Yeah.
shouldn't that elevate my status? Even if it's broad, doesn't it prove I have the intellectual horsepower?
It proves you have intellectual horsepower, yes. But remember, our rule buyers aren't buying your raw intellectual horsepower. They are buying a solution to their specific risk.
Okay, fair point.
When you publish that highly academic, broad piece and you push it out to 10,000 people, what is the actual psychological experience of the buyer receiving it?
Right, what are they feeling?
They look at the title, Navigating Paradigm Shifts. Their brain instantly categorizes it as consultant theory.
Consultant theory, yeah.
It does not attach to the immediate bleeding neck problem sitting on their desk, which right now might be that their Asian manufacturing partners are missing shipping deadlines by 14 days, and it's costing them millions in retail chargebacks.
Right, the paper doesn't speak to the chargebacks.
Exactly, so they might hit like on your post because it sounds smart. They might even accept your connection request. That registers as a win on your dashboard.
The green arrow goes up.
The green arrow goes up. You have created visibility, but you have absolutely no context.
So I am essentially just amplifying my own ambiguity.
Precisely. If your core message lacks clear, customer-centric meaning, generating more visibility just gives buyers more chances to remain unsure about what you actually do.
That makes total sense.
If I don't understand the specific, tangible value you provide after reading one vague fragment, reading 20 vague fragments is not going to suddenly clarify things.
Right, it's not a puzzle they're trying to piece together.
No, it's just going to solidify my impression that you are a generalist firm that speaks in abstractions. And this is the inherent flaw of broad reach in high-trust B2B environments.
Because broad reach dilutes the message.
Exactly. Broad reach requires you to water down your message so that it applies to the largest number of people. But when you water down the context, you strip away the exact elements, the hyper-specific relevance, that actually cause an enterprise buyer to take action.
You generate surface-level awareness, but zero actual authority.
Yes. You have motion, but no movement.
Motion, but no movement. I love that. And I think the only way to truly prove the failure of the activity trap is to look at hard, undeniable data.
We need the receipts.
We need the receipts. We need to look at what happens when the volume strategy collides with reality. So let's walk through a direct side-by-side comparison.
Perfect.
We are going to look at the tale of two firms, Company A and Company B. Both of these are consulting firms operating under the exact same market conditions, targeting similar enterprise problems. And this comparison is going to definitively prove that effort and activity do not equal authority.
Yes, the data from this case study is incredibly revealing, but we have to be meticulous about setting the baseline parameters.
Right, no skewed variables.
Exactly. If we're going to draw scientific conclusions from this, we must ensure we are comparing apples to apples. So, here are the guardrails for this comparison.
Go, let's hear.
First, this happened over the exact same general period of time, so there are no macroeconomic variables skewing the data.
Got it. Same time period.
Second, both firms were using the identical platform for their outreach. They were both executing on LinkedIn.
Okay, same platform.
Third, they used the same basic tools and infrastructure. And fourth, they put in a comparable amount of strategic effort and resource allocation.
And I want to add one more crucial point of context for the founders listening. We are not talking about automated spray and pray bot activity here.
Definitely not.
Right. Neither Company A nor Company B was running some shady script that scrapes emails and blasts out generic spam. Both of these firms were conducting genuine, intentional, human-led outreach.
Yes, this was real effort.
Both firms possessed real, deep expertise. They were both genuinely trying to build relationships with enterprise buyers.
Exactly. The variable was not the quality of the firm's underlying expertise, nor was it the legitimacy of their effort. The only variable was how they translated that expertise into market signals.
Okay, so let's begin with Company A.
Let's do it.
This is the firm that fell headfirst into the activity illusion. They adopted a broad reach strategy. They wanted to cast the widest net possible to generate maximum visibility.
The volume play.
The volume play. And if you just look at their top-of-funnel metrics, you would think they were crushing it.
Oh, they probably felt great.
Oh, they definitely did. When we look at the numbers for this specific period, Company A racked up about 2,500 accepted connections on LinkedIn.
2,500?
Let's pause and appreciate that number. 2,500 enterprise buyers, directors, and VPs looked at Company A's outreach and clicked accept.
That's a huge network expansion.
Massive. If you are a founder running a marketing team and they report back that they've expanded your network by 2,500 target prospects, I mean, you were probably popping champagne.
It looks like massive momentum.
It really does. But here is the brutal reality of the activity trap. From those 2,500 connections, well, they generated zero meaningful leads.
Zero.
Zero. Not a single qualified, pipeline-ready conversation materialized from an audience of 2,500 people.
It is a stunning collapse of conversion, and we really have to dissect why it happened.
These two.
As we established, Company A was not a bad firm. They had very strong enterprise capabilities. But let's look at the anatomy of those 2,500 interactions.
There.
Because they were casting a wide net, their messaging had to be broad. We can safely assume their outreach looked something like this. Hi, Sarah. I see you are a leader in the manufacturing space. We help enterprise organizations optimize workflows and drive operational resilience. I'd love to connect and share insights.
Very typical.
Very typical. Now, analyze the cognitive load on the buyer receiving that fragment.
It's massive. I mean, optimized workflows, operational resilience, these are empty vessels. They mean everything and nothing.
Exactly. So the buyer, let's call him a VP of operations, receives this message. He thinks, well, optimizing workflows is generally a good thing, and this person doesn't seem crazy, so I'll accept the connection.
Right. It's polite.
It's polite, but no meaning was transferred. The VP of operations did not read that message and think, this firm solves the specific inventory reconciliation error that is keeping me up at night.
Right, because Company A didn't bring up inventory reconciliation.
Because Company A failed to provide specific customer-centric context, the VP instantly files Company A into a mental folder labeled Generic Consultants.
And that folder just gets ignored.
It gets completely ignored. They created 2,500 connections, but they created zero authority. They sent thousands of signals, but none of those signals helped the buyer quickly place the firm in a specific, highly valuable category.
It was just background noise disguised as momentum.
Exactly.
It's the equivalent of like standing in the middle of Times Square and handing out a sleek, beautifully designed business card that just says, I solve business problems, to 2,500 strangers.
Such a good visual.
Right. Everyone takes the card because it's polite, but your phone never rings because no one knows what you actually specialize in.
They don't know what to hire you for.
Right. You feel exhausted from handing out all those cards, so you think you've done a hard day's work, but the market hasn't moved an inch. So that is the tragedy of Company A. 2,500 connections, zero leads.
Rough.
Now, let's look at the contrasting approach. Let's look at Company B.
Same time frame.
Same time frame, same LinkedIn platform, same level of effort. But Company B took a fundamentally different approach. They did not want to cast a wide net. They wanted to build intense, undeniable context.
And look at how that strategic shift manifests in the raw numbers. Over that same period, Company B generated far fewer connections.
How many?
They didn't hit thousands. They only generated about 300 accepted connections.
Okay, so 300. If you are trapped in the volume mindset, 300 looks like a huge failure compared to 2,500.
It looks tiny. But let's look at the outcome. From those 300 targeted connections, Company B generated 75 qualified leads.
Wait, 75? I really want the listeners to let that math sink in. 300 connections yielding 75 leads.
That is a 25% conversion rate.
A 25% conversion rate from a cold connection to a meaningful pipeline conversation. That is almost unheard of in complex B2B sales.
It is extraordinary. But, as we're going to see, it is not magic.
Okay.
Company B did not uncover some secret LinkedIn algorithm. They didn't just do more outreach. In fact, they did drastically less in terms of raw volume.
Right, 300 versus 2,500.
The mechanism behind this 25% conversion rate is that Company B weaponized context.
Weaponized context. I love that phrase.
Their outreach was highly targeted, not just in who they were reaching out to, but in the exact nature of the problem they were speaking to. They weren't trying to connect with everyone in manufacturing. They were reaching and educating the right people with a very specific narrative.
Let's invent the hypothetical Company B message to contrast it with Company A. If Company A was saying, we optimize workflows, what is Company B saying that creates a 25% conversion rate?
Okay, Company B's fragment would look something like this. Hi, Sarah. I noticed your firm recently acquired Company X. Usually when mid-market manufacturers integrate legacy ERP systems during an acquisition, they experience a 12 to 15% margin bleed in the first 2 quarters due to data siloing. We exclusively help COOs fix that specific integration gap. Let's connect.
Oh, wow. Okay, the difference in cognitive load there is staggering.
Isn't it?
If I am Sarah, the COO, I don't have to translate anything.
None at all. Let's map Sarah's psychological journey when she reads that. First, the message is highly specific. It references an acquisition.
Right.
Second, it identifies a highly specific risk, a 12 to 15% margin bleed. Third, it isolates the mechanism of that risk, legacy ERP integration and data siloing. Sarah does not have to burn a single calorie trying to figure out what Company B does. The context is fiercely customer-centric. Company B has perfectly articulated the exact nightmare that Sarah is currently having.
And because they articulated the problem so clearly, Sarah's brain immediately makes the subconscious leap. She thinks, well, if they understand my problem this precisely, they must have the solution.
That is the exact heuristic the buyer's brain uses. By clearly defining the problem in the buyer's own language, Company B's expertise was instantly recognizable as authority.
They didn't need 2,500 connections because when you are that precise, when your interpretation is that flawless, you only need to speak to the 300 people who are actively experiencing that pain.
Exactly. They reached and educated the right people more effectively. Buyers understood them faster.
Which brings us to the ultimate lesson of this comparison. If there is one sentence from this entire deep dive that every founder should write on a sticky note and put on their monitor, it is this. The difference was not activity. It was interpretation.
I will echo that because it is the foundational truth of modern B2B growth. The difference was not activity, it was interpretation.
Right.
The deep business lesson here is that customer-centric context is the ultimate competitive advantage. Company A failed because they forced the buyer to interpret their generic signals. Company B won because they removed the burden of interpretation entirely.
He made it easy.
They made it incredibly easy for the right buyers to quickly understand exactly what problem the firm helps with, why that problem matters right now, and why the firm is credible enough to be considered a safe bet.
Okay, so let's pivot this to the founder who is listening right now. Let's say you are looking at your own firm's metrics, and you are realizing that you look a lot more like Company A.
A tough realization.
It is. You have a lot of connections. You are writing a lot of brilliant academic thought leadership. Your team is constantly busy, but the pipeline is just stagnant. And you want to become Company B. If the goal isn't to just be louder, if the goal isn't to just run more LinkedIn campaigns, how do we actually reconstruct our firm's market presence to become Company B?
It starts with a fundamental shift in the primary metric you care about. You have to change the core question that drives your firm's growth strategy.
Change the core question. Okay, from what to what?
You must stop looking at your marketing dashboards and asking, are we doing enough activity?
Right, because that's a trap.
That question is a trap. It will always lead you back to Company A's strategy of generating noise. You have to start asking a much better, much more difficult question. Are buyers moving closer?
Are buyers moving closer? I love the friction in that question. It forces you to ignore vanity metrics. It doesn't matter if 10,000 people saw the post.
Yeah.
Did one ideal buyer move 1 inch closer to a high-trust conversation? But I have to push back here, because moving closer implies a journey.
It does.
If the buyer isn't swayed by our impressive resumes, and they aren't swayed by the sheer volume of our activity, what exactly are they looking for?
Good question.
Right? If they are evaluating us from fragments, what specific elements must be present in those fragments to compel them to move closer?
To answer that, we have to look at the psychology of risk in enterprise buying. High-trust B2B decisions are incredibly dangerous for the buyer.
Oh, totally.
If a consumer buys a bad pair of shoes, they lose $100. If an enterprise buyer hires the wrong consulting firm for a $500,000 digital transformation project, they don't just lose the company's money.
They lose their reputation.
They lose massive amounts of time. They lose political capital with their board. And if the project fails spectacularly, they might lose their job.
So it's about survival for them.
Yes. So when a buyer is evaluating your firm from fragments, they are not looking for expertise. They're looking for risk mitigation. They are looking to reduce their own burden.
Reduce the buyer's burden.
Exactly. Before a buyer will choose your firm, they require 4 absolute non-negotiables to be clear in their interpretation.
Okay, lay them out.
They need meaning, proof, relevance, and confidence.
Okay, this is the blueprint, meaning proof, relevance, and confidence. Let's break these down with intense granularity because I think founders often misunderstand what these actually look like in practice.
Absolutely, they do.
Let's start with meaning. Is meaning just having a catchy tagline on the website?
No, a tagline is just clever copywriting. Meaning is the foundational narrative of your firm's existence in the market.
The foundational narrative.
When a buyer encounters your firm, their brain immediately asks, do I understand exactly what you stand for? Can I easily articulate what specific problem you solve? And more importantly, why your unique perspective on that problem is valuable?
So it's clarity over cleverness.
100%. If you lack meaning, you are just providing information without context. Company A had information. We optimize workflows, but it had no meaning.
Right.
Company B had profound march, meaning we stopped the 15% margin bleed during ERP integrations. Meaning is the anchor. If a buyer cannot immediately derive meaning from your fragments, they will not proceed to evaluate anything else.
I see. Meaning is the categorization step. Oh, you are the firm that fixes X.
Exactly.
So once I have established else, meaning the buyer moves to the second requirement. Proof.
Ugh.
Now, I know exactly what every founder listening is thinking. Proof, easy. I have a whole tab on my website called Case Studies. I have logos of Fortune 500 companies in a slider on my homepage. I have proof.
I had the logo suit.
Yeah, the logo soup. Let me challenge that because I know founders who have a dozen detailed case studies on their site and they still lose deals to competitors who have fewer case studies. Is proof really just throwing past results at the buyer?
That is a brilliant challenge, and the answer is absolutely not. Throwing generic case studies at a buyer is a company A tactic. It lacks context.
Yeah.
Proof is not just evidence that you are competent. Proof is evidence that you have solved their exact problem in their exact environment.
Oh, that's a big distinction.
Huge. Imagine our buyer, Sarah, the COO of a mid-market manufacturing firm. If Company B claims they can fix her ERP integration and their proof is a case study about how they helped a boutique marketing agency implement new HR software.
Right. That doesn't compute.
That is not proof to Sarah. In fact, it creates cognitive dissonance. It makes her think, wait, do they really understand manufacturing?
They might be competent, but they're not competent for me.
Exactly. Proof must validate the specific meaning you just established. It must mirror the buyer's reality so closely that they can see themselves in the success story. Proof is the buyer looking at your fragment and saying, they aren't just theorizing, they have successfully navigated the exact minefield I am currently standing in.
So proof has to be highly contextualized. It's not just we are smart. It's we have a track record of killing the exact monster that is currently under your bed.
I love that. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we have meaning, we kill this specific monster, and proof, here is the pelt of that exact monster from another village.
Beautiful.
What is relevance? Because on the surface, relevance sounds a lot like meaning.
They are closely related, but relevance introduces the critical dimension of time and urgency.
Time and urgency.
You can have crystal clear meaning, and you can have irrefutable proof. But if it doesn't align with the specific, urgent, bleeding neck problem sitting on the buyer's desk right now, they will not act. They will say, wow, this is a great firm. I'll keep them in mind for next year.
And next year is the graveyard of consulting pipelines.
It really is. Relevance is the connection to the buyer's immediate, unignorable reality. It is the catalyst that turns a passive observer into an active participant in your sales process. Let's go back to Company A publishing that massive white paper on post-digital supply chains. That has zero immediate relevance to a buyer who is currently trying to figure out why a specific shipping port is backed up.
Yeah, it's just academic to them at that point.
Exactly. But Company B's message about the 15% margin bleed during an ERP integration. If Sarah is currently in month 3 of an acquisition and she just saw her margins dip by 12%, the relevance is so high it feels almost psychic.
It's like they're reading her diary.
Yes. Relevance is what forces the buyer to say, I need to take a meeting with this firm this week.
That makes perfect sense. Relevance is the urgency trigger. Which brings us to the final and perhaps most difficult, non-negotiable, confidence.
Yes, confidence.
I hear you on confidence, but let's be real about the market dynamics. Let's say I am a founder of a 50-person boutique consulting firm. I have meaning, proof, and relevance dialed in. But I am sitting at the table against McKinsey or Deloitte or BCG.
The giants.
Right, the giants. There's an old saying in enterprise buying. Nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM or McKinsey. If I am the buyer and I hire McKinsey and the project fails, I can tell my board, look, I hired the best in the world. It wasn't my fault.
What about the safety net?
Exactly.
Yep.
If I hire the boutique firm and it fails, I get fired for taking a risk on an unknown entity. How does a founder build enough confidence through these fragments to beat the safe giant? That feels impossible just through better interpretation.
It is the ultimate David and Goliath question in professional services. And the answer lies entirely in how you define confidence.
Right?
Confidence is not about seeming bigger than McKinsey. You can't out McKinsey. If you try to compete on broad, generic scale, you will lose because you trigger the exact nobody gets fired for hiring the giant reflex you just described.
Right, and can't play their game.
You have to change the game. Confidence is the culmination of meaning, proof, and relevance executed with such surgical precision that the buyer feels it is actually more risky to hire the generalist giant than to hire the hyper specialist. So you invert the risk.
Yes. You use your hyper-specific context to reframe the giant as the risky option.
How does that work in practice?
When your fragments consistently demonstrate that you are the undisputed master of this one very narrow, very expensive problem, the buyer's internal narrative shifts.
They start doubting the generalist.
Exactly. They start to think, McKinsey is brilliant, but they are going to send me a team of 25-year-old MBAs to learn my industry on my dime. This boutique firm already knows the answer. They have solved this specific integration issue 40 times.
Right. They aren't learning on the job.
Confidence means the buyer feels safe, but not just safe taking your call. They feel safe putting their own internal reputation on the line to introduce you to their peers. They feel safe defending you to a skeptical CFO who wants to hire the giant.
They can look the CFO in the eye and say, the giant understands business. This firm understands our business. Exactly. When you provide that level of interpretation, you arm the buyer with the narrative they need to defend choosing you. And this is the grand synthesis of our deep dive. Authority reduces the buyer's burden.
It removes the friction.
If your firm is easy to interpret, if every fragment you put into the market immediately provides proof, relevance, and confidence, the buyer does not have to burn calories trying to figure out if you are a safe bet.
You've done the work for them.
You have done the hard work of translation for them. You have made the decision feel obvious, rational, and highly defensible to their internal stakeholders.
So if we bring this all the way back to the founder, staring at that rejection email, wondering why they lost to a lesser firm.
Yeah.
You didn't lose because your expertise was lacking. You lost because the other firm made it easier for the buying committee to defend the choice.
Precisely. If we connect this back to our overarching theme, the directive for any founder listening to this is remarkably clear.
Which is?
The goal is not to become louder. You do not need to shout over the noise of the market by producing thousands of meaningless fragments.
The company A-trap.
Right. The goal is to become easier. You must become easier to understand, easier to trust, easier to explain to a skeptical buying committee, and ultimately easier to choose.
Easier to understand, trust, explain, and choose. That is the translation problem solved. That is the essence of the authority gap.
It really is.
Look, we have unpacked a tremendous amount of psychology and strategy today. We've explored why the curse of knowledge blinds us, why the activity trap creates false momentum, and how mastering customer-centric interpretation like Company B can fundamentally alter your firm's trajectory.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But the truth is, this is just the foundational layer, the full argument, the granular mechanics of exactly how to build that meaning. Proof, relevance, and confidence across every touch point of your firm is beautifully developed in the book, The Authority Gap. You can absolutely use this companion series as your perfect entry point into those core ideas, but the book is the blueprint.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, a practical exercise for when you get back to your desk.
Let's hear it.
We have established that your buyers are evaluating you from scattered fragments, and they are using those fragments to make massive assumptions about your value.
Right.
So I want you to think about the very first fragment a new prospect usually encounters. Maybe it's the headline on your LinkedIn profile. Maybe it's the hero text on your website homepage.
The front door, essentially.
Yes. Look at that single fragment with the eyes of a stressed, overwhelmed buyer who knows nothing about your internal brilliance. What is the immediate, unguided interpretation you are forcing them to make? And more importantly, is it the interpretation you actually want them to make?
If this episode made you wonder where buyers may be losing confidence in your firm, take the Custom Authority Gap prescription quiz. It takes about 2 minutes, shows you where your authority gaps may be, and gives you the option to participate in a discussion group led by Derek Little, author of The Authority Gap. The Authority Gap is available on Amazon. To get the Authority Gap Reader Preview Kit, including the field guide and preview chapters, visit the book page at trailblazermastery.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.